Hello everyone, welcome to yet another Cave Divers React. My name is Gus.
Hi, I'm Woody.
And today we're going to be talking about Chris Lemons, who's the subject of the documentary Last Breath on Netflix. Very popular documentary. We've received hundreds and hundreds of requests for us to react to Last Breath, but obviously it's really tough to react to a full-length documentary or a movie because then the reactions would be like 3 hour long.
Yeah.
Reaction. So we wanted to, I found a video that kind of covers the facts of what happened, and that way we can add our thoughts to it. So hopefully you get the same level of reaction.
This is a fascinating story. I have seen the
saw the
documentary.
documentary, yeah.
I did. And I can't, what I like that reason that I like that we're doing this is I can't really remember what they ultimately said was the reason. Well, I don't want to give it away, but there's some reasons of some things happen, and it's unbelievable. I don't want to say it at the beginning, but it's unbelievable what happens and the why behind it. I'll
That's
just
right.
say that.
And by the way, if you like what we're wearing, the new merch.
Okay, let me see if I can raise mine up. Can you see
Yeah,
that?
it's awesome.
It's really nice.
Shopdivetalk.com is the website.
Yes.
It's not www.shopdivetalk.com. For some reason, that's not working right, but we're working on fixing it. But just go and type in shopdivetalk.com and
Yeah,
get
it's about
some
to
merch.
it's about to get faster. We know we've had a little bit of hang-ups where it's currently hosted, but we're improving that.
Do you want your keyboard?
Yeah.
Let's hook them up.
Thank you. Yeah, man. I got a new I got a new microphone as well. I don't
Microphone
know if folks can
stand,
see the
yeah.
new microphone
Arm.
stand. So you're fixing me up nicely. All right, but
You're getting upgraded. Let's give it a shot and talk about what happened.
Okay.
Extreme Trends presents, this driver's oxygen gets cut off 300
driver,
feet
he's a
underwater.
diver,
Here is how he survives. Before we begin, do us a favor and click that like button. Also subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to be inspired by these heartwarming stories every day. Chris Lemons has an unusual job. His work would have him and his crewmates diving hundreds of feet into the North Sea, where they'd repair oil rigs submerged underwater.
By the way, I can tell you already this video is annoying just because there's so much content out there of commercial diving. Why wouldn't he use clips from commercial diving? I don't get it. He'll be talking like, this commercial diver dives super deep and put people snorkeling, like as the video behind the scenes. I don't get it.
Obviously, this type of task doesn't make for a traditional day job. He and the rest of his crew aboard the Bibi Topaz had a simple mission. Their vessel was to plunge deep into the North Sea. Then Lemons, Dave Uasa, and Duncan Alcock would step into an even smaller diving bell to take them farther down beneath the waves. First, they had dived 300 feet down from the bell. Then Lemons and Uasa began repair work on a damaged pipe while Alcock operated their vessel. The start of their mission had gone off without a hitch, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. All of a sudden, the Bibi Topaz started drifting through the North Sea, dragging the diving bell with it. For Lemons and Uasa, this posed a life-threatening problem. Their oxygen cords were connected to the smaller vessel that had begun to move without warning.
All right, there's so many mistakes.
I'm actually confused.
Non-stop. Just dun, 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 dun. Just hit them all in a row, and they were all a disaster.
Go ahead,
All right.
and then I'll comment after.
So-
I'm shaking my head because I'm like, what are they talking about? That's not
First
what
of all,
happened.
I'm not a commercial diver, so whatever I'm about to say, there's a chance it's wrong. All right, but when it comes to commercial diving, based on what I've learned over the years, essentially what you do is you go into a compression chamber, right, that takes you to the depth where you're going to be working at, and that can take days to take you to that depth and fully saturate your tissues. The idea is that by the time you start going out to work, basically, your tissues are fully saturated, so you can stay working for hours if you have to. Because the problem is if you dive down to 300 feet, which we can, Woody, you've been deeper than that, you have to decompress on the way up. And I think we were talking about in previous videos and before that for every minute we spend around 300 feet, we have to spend 5 minutes of decompression. So commercial divers cannot go down to 300 feet, work for like 2 or 3 hours, and then spend 15 hours decompressing every day. You can't do that for your everyday job. So what they do is they go down to that depth and they stay at that depth for weeks, like 2.5 or 3 weeks. They stay at that depth, and then it takes them 7 days or so to decompress. So they spend all of the time up front, and then they decompress afterwards. So this video made it sound like this guy's just dove down to 300 feet. That's not how it works. You get into a bell, which is literally like a big room with a kitchen and everything, right? A living quarters, basically, that is compressed to the depth, 300 feet in this case, or 100 meters or so. And then you live inside that bell for weeks at a time. Whoa, let's stop the video right there for a second, because instead of giving you kind of a half-ass explanation of what saturation divers go through, I actually found a really cool animation from this company called JFD. The company does marine services, and they provide kind of saturation living headquarters and solutions. And they did a really cool animation that I wanted to show you. So I want to have like this mini reaction within the reaction. It's a 5-minute video, so I'm going to start playing it and kind of talk about their design. So it's a real-time virtual tour. Some of this stuff I have no idea what he does. Once again, I'm not a saturation diver or a commercial diver in any capacity. This is just my basic understanding of what saturation diving is all about. All right, so this is illustrating what a ship is, or what the parts inside the ship will look like. So they don't have the full ship, just the piece that will support the dive operations. And this is really, really cool. So let me show you what this looks like. First of all, you have this command center over here, which is super cool. It allows you to monitor anything related to the dive. So it's the dive control area. And as we move inwards, you see all of the kind of hydraulics related to the diving bell. So diving bell is that yellow thing that you see right there, and it's lowered by this pulley system or this cable. Again, I'm not using all the right words for this, but large winches, I guess that's the right word for it. It will lower the bell into the water to the depth that you're supposed to be working on. Now, this is cool. This is a hyperbaric live boat. What a lot of people might not be aware of is that, once again, because the divers, with the cage system, because the divers are pressurized, are under pressure and fully saturated, if there's an emergency and they have to go into a live boat, they cannot just go into a regular dive boat. Remember, it takes them like 7 days to decompress and get back to like regular surface level. Let's just say they're fully decompressed, get rid of all that saturation. So the emergency life raft, and that's the bell where they dive from, the emergency lifeboat has to be also compressed to depth. So if they have to go into that and get out of the boat because it's sinking or whatever, it's fully compressed to 300 feet or whatever, and they can spend 7 days decompressing. So that's the bell. As you can see, is lowered by the winches to the desired depth where they're going to be working. All right. So some of the electric gas miser diver gas recovery system, I have no clue what this is, but sounds cool. So these guys do that. And by the way, I'm not endorsing this company. I just love the animation. I wanted to show it to you. So, they're my favorite underwater maritime, commercial diving, saturation diving solutions. So I guess they're my favorite. They're the only one I know of. So gas backs, no idea what that is. Sounds cool. Now I want to get to the diving chambers or the living chambers so you can see kind of what goes in there. I mean, look at this stuff right here. The gas they have. Look at these tanks. They're humongous. High pressure storage banks. Look at all of that gas. It's awesome. And obviously that gas will be the appropriate mix for the depth the divers are going to. And I guess they are controlled by the dive control system, or this room that we're about to see here. Saturation control. Look at that stuff. I mean, how cool is that? I know that we always talk about how cave divers are kind of like the black belt of diving in terms of skills, but in terms of knowledge, commercial divers, saturation divers are the black belt of like the science of diving. So there's the divers' living chambers. You can see they have like a little dining room or meeting room type of thing where they can all sit and have a table. It's kind of cool right there on the right. And we're about to go inside the chamber. So you can see there's beds. That is the living room that I was just talking about, the dining room. And as you move in, all of this, by the way, is pressurized, once again, to 300 feet, 400 feet, 500, whatever depth they're working on. And they can move from the living quarters into some of the other areas. Like, for example, the facilities. If they need to go to the restroom, there's another one of these that is a restroom, and it's pressurized as well. And also to go into the diving belt. I don't know if the diving bell. If you saw it earlier, the dive bell had like a connector to it, and that connector kind of retracted and allowed it to go down to depth. So that's what the living quarters look like. So those are the beds, each one of them with its own, air conditioning or whatever unit. This is the dive bell, by the way, or fan or whatever control and entertainment system and all of that per diver. So this is what the bell looks like. You go underwater, and there's a Cobra system, which we will be talking about in a few minutes, I promise you. And then you dive out of the bell, just like that. So you dive in. You saw that the diver had an umbilical or that thing connected, wire connected to it that we've been talking about, providing gas and electricity and all of that stuff. And again, we will get into more details with that later on the video, but quick interruption. Sorry about the length, but I just thought it was too cool. This animation was too cool to pass. Let's get back to the video.
Yeah,
Right.
So that's the part that was rather deceiving. They're showing these pictures that are nothing to do with the actual incident that happened. Everybody should know that. It showed like a wooden sailboat. I mean, this thing was a massive electronically controlled commercial vessel made for automatically having a computer move the boat to keep stationary over a certain fixed point. Otherwise, it could drift away, because
Right.
you're talking about seas that are like 20 and 25-foot seas at times. This is in the North Sea. Also, like Gus said, they're not in a tank and in what looked to be like a wetsuit or just a basic full-face mask. They're they're going 300 plus feet underwater in freezing cold water. It's a pretty serious, like fully enclosed type of mask system for the surface supply.
Yeah,
and
hard
then,
hats.
like hard hats, and then, they're not in a wetsuit. So,
Right, and that tether not only provides the gas to breathe, but it also provides, I think it recirculates warm water to keep them warm for hours and hours in that freezing water, as Woody mentioned, and also even electricity to run lights, which typically are embedded into the helmet, and also for comms. They can talk to the diver back
Yes.
and forward. So all
Hopefully
of those,
they'll show that.
It's a group of cables.
I hope they show that. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so. It's just the content behind the scenes, the images, the videos match nothing
No.
to what happened. It's just so confusing.
I was confused.
Yeah, people watching this are like, oh, wow, they just went underwater and they were
No.
just diving around in wetsuits.
Oh, no.
Even through the water,
Look at
Yuasa could hear his Lemon's
Snorkeler.
life support cable, surrounded in metal,
Okay, that
snapped
looks more
under
like
the
it.
pressure. Aboard the diving bell, Alcock pulled on Lemon's oxygen supply cord. He kept doing that until the ragged ends rose above the bottom of the vessel. With that, they knew they had to embark on a
This has
rescue
nothing
mission,
to do
but
with it.
one that might be in vain.
That
Still, they
does.
had to try. The team's supervisor, Craig Frederick, called down to the underwater team, thanks to a sound-powered phone he had on deck, frantically begging the divers to return to the bell.
It's
Lemons
nothing like
obeyed
that.
orders, following his umbilical so that he could return to its base, the diving bell. As he pulled himself out of the oil drilling structure, though, he realized he had another huge problem. His support cord had gotten stuck on something. He called into Alcock, asking him to give a bit more slack on the line. The dive supervisor advised Alcock to pull on Lemon's cord to see what came back with it. If the diver's helmet remained attached to the umbilical, then he'd have a serious problem. Once Alcock pulled on the cables, he eventually got to the end where they had snapped. Luckily, Lemon still had his helmet on, but the helmet wouldn't be enough to sustain Lemon's life for long. Frederick estimated that the diver had about a 10-minute supply of emergency oxygen, and time had started ticking as soon as the cable snapped.
All right, so I think what happened in the documentary, I watched this months ago, so I don't remember exactly how it went. But what happened was the vessel's GPS positioning system, which you talked about, which is supposed to maintain the ship on top of where the divers are working below, it went blue screen of death. It just stopped working. And so the waves and the wind and all of that moved the boat away, which then started pulling on the chamber where these guys are getting provided air and all of that, which then it started pulling on the divers themselves. Chris gets stuck because he's doing work in like a metal structure below, maybe pipes or something. I don't remember exactly what he was doing. It's like a platform or something. And his cable gets stuck into the platform. So he's not coming with the cable. He's just stuck between himself and the bell. Now the bell is under so much pressure from the ship that eventually snaps the cable. Like it just comes loose. The other diver that was with him gets pulled up. His cable wasn't tied to anything. It wasn't stuck. So he gets pulled into the bell by the cable like a duck. It's just like he gets pulled, but Chris's cable was stuck into something and snapped. So now he's on the bottom of the ocean, and everything we just talked about in terms of everything provided to him by this tether is gone. No more running air, no more running electricity, no more running warm water. All that stuff stops happening. He's just left with a little bailout cylinder they have, which is supposed to have enough gas for them to get to the bell. So if like the cable becomes detached, then he's able to, just go to the bell and breathe out of that. But remember that his cable is stuck to the platform, so he can't move. That's what happened.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is that it's very difficult to control the ship. That's what I remember in the documentary. It's massive waves pushing it all over, and this thing has to stay put like over a pretty small area. So it's a computer that does it. Imagine it's doing various different thrusts at different points in the ship to keep the ship stationary. And then they ultimately lose that control. So the question is, are they able to get the ship back to that point, and how? Well, we're going to find out.
Yep.
Aboard the Bibi Topaz, he and the rest of the team tried to regain control of their navigation so they could stop moving and halt the diving bell's drift too. All the while, Yuasa drifted in the water as the diving bell pulled his cable. He mustered up the strength to pull himself back to the vessel by the umbilical. After a half an hour, much more time than Lemons had in his oxygen tank, Frederick had regained control of the vessels, which meant that Yuasa could dive for his comrade. Lemon's lifeless body reposed atop the oil rigging structure. Yuasa frankly said, "I didn't expect him to be alive. Why would you?" But Yuasa still shared his breathing tube with Lemons as he carried the weight of the diver's body back to the bell. Once Alcock slipped off the helmet covering Lemons' head, he saw an unforgettable sight. As he described it, Lemons is a bald guy. He's half frozen to death, and he's gone as blue as a pair of denim jeans. Regardless of how dire Lemon's situation appeared, though, Alcock positioned the lifeless body so that he could try mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. He pushed fingers into the diver's nose, kept his head straight, and breathed air into his mouth. Then the unthinkable happened. Lemons took a huge, resonating inhale. Alcock said that the sound of Lemon's breath reminded him of New Year crackers, fireworks, you name it, everything. It was like, bloody hell, he's actually alive! Even with the diver breathing, though, there still lingered the possibility that he had suffered brain damage while underwater for so long without oxygen. Eventually, though, Lemons regained total coherence. He began speaking to his coworkers on the diving bell within minutes of his resuscitation. He defied some serious odds in making it out of the North Sea with his life. In general, a human can only survive for 3 minutes without oxygen. Surprisingly, though, Lemons said he quickly felt at peace with what he thought was his fate. Once I had resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to save myself, calm comes over you. It wasn't a case of frantically thrashing about and searching for a solution. It was a case of quiet resignation and thinking of the people you're going to leave behind, he admits. So needless to say, when Lemons awoke in the midst of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, he felt very confused. He told BBC Future it took several days for him to understand the gravity of the situation, he said. As far as how he survived, Lemons smiles as he says in his last breath, "I don't think I'll ever know." Afterward, Lemons returned home, and a few months later, he and his fiancée became husband and wife. Perhaps most surprising of all, though, his experience did little to deter him from pursuing his career. A mere 3 weeks after the incident, Lemons returned to the North Sea with his team, ready to dive once again, and he continues to do so today. That was an incredible near-death experience. Thanks for watching until the end. Be sure to tap on the next videos for more heart-pumping stories.
All right, so that's the end of that. So I want to talk about what I think it happened and how he survived. And these are just hypothesis.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about it while they were talking. So the body, it seems like to me, his body just stopped having the need to metabolize oxygen. It was literally completely shut down. I mean, it was frozen. They said his face looked like it was completely frozen. So I would guess that everything stopped. The cells stopped functioning. The blood wasn't circulating or barely moving. The heartbeat was either, I guess it was still beating because they only gave a mouth to mouth, but it was beating so slow and everything was moving so, or barely moving, that he had no more need for a lot of oxygen. Therefore, it was just enough to, I guess, not give him brain damage because the body itself, the rest of his body wasn't using the oxygen that we normally use just to be able to sustain life, right? Because oxygen is the fuel for life. That's all I can think of. And I kind of remember reading about that afterwards. Again, it's been like a year or two since I've seen that. But I believe that was the conclusion they came to, that the cold itself is what kept him alive, or was enabled him to be resuscitated with just giving him rescue breaths. They didn't even shock him or give him chest compressions.
Yep. And that is true. When the body gets cold, and again, I'm not a doctor or anything, all the blood rushes to the core or something like that, right? That's why our hands and feet are the first one to get cold, because the blood rushes to the core to keep it hot. And I assume there's some other things that happen, like your heart rate slows down. Most of the heart rate and the blood and the oxygenation is to support brain function and not for you to move around.
Exactly.
And that's why if you watch the documentary, there's actual footage, which he used a little piece of that on this video, which is great.
This
of
is
him
the,
just
this is
laying
the boat,
down.
by the way.
Yeah, of him just laying down and doing nothing, right? Just some twitches here and there or whatever, but he wasn't really moving or doing anything. So that's why he was blue. It's like he was so cold. So I think the cold is what helped him extend it. But again, my hypotheses on what happened here, and I want to hear your opinion. I wish Doug was here because he can make a more informed decision on what the body does, or a more informed opinion on what the body does. I think that what happens is, and those helmets, those hard hats that they use, they kind of screw into the suit, right?
Yes.
So like the whole suit is open.
Yes.
Right? You're not just breathing in your head and then your suit is something else.
Right.
It's air circulating through it.
Yep.
So I think what happens is, because he was so deep, he was probably on a high PO2 to begin with. Let's say 1.4, something like that. And when he got severed from the ship, his bailout, kick in and maintain that high PO2, right? And until he ran out. And then when he ran out, he just started doing like what we've shown right here on the show with semi-closed rebreathers. Obviously, he doesn't have scrubber inside the suit to scrub out the CO2, but it extends his breath, because when the air stops, if the PO2 is at 1.4, and again, just for those of you who haven't watched these videos before, we've talked about that, the body needs anywhere, just to keep it simple, between 1.6 and 0.16. All right. So that is the range that you have for consciousness. If we're going to accept that, if it was around 1.4, you start breathing down until you go to 0.16. So when they say, for example, that he only had 10 minutes of oxygen left, what they're talking about is that the bailout tank that he had supplied him for 10 minutes with air. So for the first 10 of the 30, he was breathing normal. His PO2 was probably high, 1.4, something like that. And then when we got to 10, if he lasted 10, maybe lasted less or maybe more, then he starts recirculating the air in his suit. And little by little, that 1.4 becomes 1.3 and 1.2 and 1.1, and he keeps going. And how long can you extend that for? We saw it on the rebreather. It took you forever, but you have scrubber.
Well, him barely breathing down there because everything shut down, probably a long time. If that's what happened, which that makes some sense.
That's an informed guess.
I don't think that's a bad guess. That's a reasonable conclusion.
So I think because that PO2 was so high to begin with, as you start breathing it down, it took him a while to get to 0.16. And at the same time that he was breathing down, his body was shutting down because of the cold. So he's breathing less and less and extended that to 30 minutes, which is, of course, when they found him, that PO2 was probably like 0.10. Like it was lower than consciousness capabilities, which is why he was unconscious, or maybe 0.08. Like it was lower than what you need to be conscious. And then once they breathed into his mouth, it was enough oxygen to bring him back up. So that is my guess.
Yeah, could be.
All right, guys, I promise this will be the last time I stop this video. But, as we were walking out after recording this video, I was talking to Woody about what lessons they can learn from this tragedy, like companies overall, not just Chris Lemons and, the company he worked for and all of that, but like commercial saturation diving overall. Is there anything they can learn from this, or maybe introduce a safety feature that would extend that gas from 10 minutes to more than that, right? Like if something like this happens again and it takes them, instead of 30 minutes, an hour, how can they prevent something like this from happening? And I mentioned to Woody that if instead of having a bailout tank, like a small tank that would provide 10 minutes worth of gas to survive, instead of having that, imagine if they had a rebreather. Imagine if they could bail out into a small rebreather, maybe not something that would last 11 hours like the Sidewinder, for example, or 5 hours or whatever it is, but imagine if it could last 2 hours or something like that. A fully closed rebreather would be amazing if you can bail out to that, or even a semi-closed rebreather. Semi-closed rebreathers are essentially gas extenders that could take that 10 minutes or those 10 minutes and run it through a scrubber and a counter lung, just the way rebreathers work, and extend the gas that you have from 10 minutes to, 40, 50, 60 minutes, whatever it is. That would be awesome. It would extend your safety margins by a while. And imagine if instead of 10 minutes, he had an hour that he can breathe normally. And then after that, you can still semi-close it, even with no more oxygen being injected, and extend that to an hour and a half or something like that. It's just more time. It's for sure not like an insurance that if you have this thing, you're going to survive. But at least Chris had, let's say, an hour to work on something and trying to free himself from it. And the video that I actually showed you earlier from the company that makes this saturation diving headquarters and systems, actually created something like that. I found this video and I had to show it to you. So bear with me. We'll get back to wrap up the video in a second, but I needed to show you this. So let me show you what this is and kind of give you a reaction along the way, just like we normally do. And there's no volume on this, so I'll talk along the way. So this is from 2014. So it's been 7 years. It's called the Cobra System from this company. And essentially what it does is that it's a rebreather built into the helmet. And how cool is this? So the Cobra set has been designed to be as simple as possible to operate and maintain. So you put this on the diver and it's good to go. The set is completely mechanical, which is great. It's like our rebreathers and relies on no complex electronics or anything like that can break. Like all DiveX breathing systems, the equipment is robust and reliable with very low work of breathing. So, sounds awesome. And this is obviously designed with the intent that the diver should not require to have to think about life support equipment, but to be allowed to just focus on the task at hand, knowing the life support is always there, right, to keep him alive. So, this guy is getting set up for this Cobra equipment. Great that he has help, by the way. We help each other get set up when we go diving all the time, especially technical diving because you have multiple tanks and just a lot of work. So these guys are helping out. So he's getting set up. He doesn't have a dry suit on. This is just a demonstration in a pool, so he doesn't have to have it. But obviously a commercial diver would have a dry suit because of the cold of the water. So there's the umbilical. He's stepping in. And he has that rebreather in the back with 2 tanks. Super awesome. So there he is at the bottom, chilling with his system ready to go. So he's turning around so you can see the rebreather, bailout rebreather system in the back, which I think is pretty cool. And the other question I was thinking when I saw So in this case, he's mimicking. So let's say you lost umbilical gas supply, no more gas whatsoever. You hit that thing, so just like it happened to Chris, and this mouthpiece comes out. It actually reminds me of the mouthpiece of the Poseidon regulator. So it comes out, and I guess you put that mouthpiece in your mouth, and then you'll be, breathing on the semi-closed rebreather in this case. The system works by injecting fresh heliox gas, so helium and oxygen, into a semi-closed breathing loop to maintain a breathable gas all the time. So you don't have to mix it, which is pretty cool. So it's mechanical, but you don't have to mix it the way we mix ours. So we have a tank of oxygen and we have a tank of helium or a diluent, which is a combination of helium and nitrogen and oxygen as well. And we press buttons to mix it on the fly. This system just has 2 heliox pre-mixed bottles, so no need to mix anything. You just breathe. It's pretty awesome. Cobra System can be activated and deactivated as required. The other thing that they answer, and I was trying to say earlier, is what happens if your helmet floods, which is crazy, right? So your helmet floods completely. That's where the mouthpiece comes on, because I originally thought about why the mouthpiece? Why not just have the helmet be the rebreather? But the mouthpiece works for that. Fully flooded helmet, roll that thing, put the mouthpiece in your mouth, and this thing works, which is awesome. You can see the bubbles coming out of it. That makes it, a semi-closed rebreather instead of a closed-circuit rebreather. But it's a gas extender. That's the purpose of semi-closed rebreathers, is to take what you would regularly get from an open-circuit tank and extend it multiple times, right? Depending on the system, it can go multiple times. So this is a simulation of what happens with a regular bailout system versus the rebreather, semi-closed rebreather system. So this guy has a couple of minutes to try to make it back to the bell. He drowns. With the rebreather, this guy has plenty of time. And you can see it at the bottom. Now, instead of having 10 minutes, this system will provide you with 45 minutes of fully independent breathing gas. So even without a tether, that thing gets severed like it happened to Chris. This system will now keep this diver alive for 45 minutes. And again, this is from 7 years ago, and this is just one company. I'm sure there are other companies out there that can do maybe 2 hours or something like that. I don't know if these guys are the best ones, but you can see the Cobra System works with open circuit bailout and with that, rebreather or semi-closed rebreather. So it's awesome. I mean, it's just great. Test it before you go dive. Count your lungs, and everything is completely encapsulated and safe. Increase positive pressure feed to allow more rapid. I didn't read what that said, but anyway, it's going through all the advantages, and I just think it's a way better system. And I don't know if they had this when Chris's accident took place. Maybe they did. I mean, rebreathers are already expensive. I assume that these commercial saturation diving rebreathers are double or triple the price. But I just thought it was such a cool solution that in the case of Chris, there would be no documentary. It wouldn't even have made the news. He would have just survived for the 30 minutes it took to go back and get him. He would have been just sitting there at the platform, kind of, arms crossed, saying hi to the rover, waiting for them to come get him. And then the bell comes back, he jumps back in, and everything is good to go. They would have just repaired the tether and get to work, to be honest. So I just thought it was cool. I interrupted the video for that, but let's get back to the original one.
What's interesting, what they don't show here is they were able to maneuver this boat back to the spot right above him to basically, and I'm trying to remember how
they reboot the computer.
How they actually got him, though, is what... Didn't they send somebody down?
They did.
They actually sent divers down.
The other diver that was out of the bell, that his wire wasn't hooked. And they kind of talked about it on the video.
And he picked him up and brought him back over.
One guy gets pulled, and he finally turns around, grabs his tether, and pulls himself as he's being pulled by the boat. He's pulling himself back to the bell.
Right, but how did they recover?
So they were able to reboot the computer or whatever. The GPS positioning system came back on.
Yes.
Back onto the point. I think they sent a rover first, and that's how they got those images of him, because the rover or that.
Right, but I'm trying to remember how they got him.
Well, once they saw that he was there, he was moving, they sent the diver back in.
That's
other
right,
guy.
that's right,
It's like,
okay.
okay, we're already on top. We
Go
can
get
see
him.
him with the rover. He's there. Go get him. And then he went and got him. Now, on the video, they said that the diver number 2 provided him with his air or something. The guy was unconscious. I have no idea what they're talking about.
No.
That's just made up, I think. But he brought him back to the chamber or whatever, to the air bell.
Yeah.
Removed the helmet. Gave him, mouth to mouth. The guy, the supporter, the support divers or surface support. It's not surface because he wasn't on surface.
Right.
But the air bell support guy, probably trained on, first aid and all of that because they cannot just go to the surface, was the one who provided that mouth to mouth and brought him back.
And was it, I can't remember again, so I'm asking more questions on this video than reacting. Did the computer come back online and get the boat back, or was the guy able to use the joystick and actually do it himself?
No, they tried manually, but I mean, even I think I remember when they got to the point, the boat would just keep going, because as long as you don't have that GPS maintaining it, that computer, and this is why computers are awesome, maintaining it on top of that point, they couldn't just stay on top of it.
Too complicated.
Yeah.
Just too much movement.
So I think I remember they tried several times. They even called the company that makes the computer, like, this thing is broken, like whatever. And they had to shut that, basically pull the breaker off, just turn off the whole ship and then turn it back on. And that's when the system came back on.
Pretty amazing. They have those systems. The computer can control this ship in those kind of seas so precisely. Little
just a bunch of thrusters, right?
Thrusters in every
Pushing.
direction, keeping it right over that spot. And the second that thing was broke, there was no way a man
Humans
could
can do it. It's
human brain could
unbelievable.
not control that enough. That to me was one of the most fascinating parts of this.
Yep. But anyway, he survived. And I'm not surprised that a few weeks later he was back to work and all of that. It was sort of like, okay, that was a freak accident. I mean,
He didn't remember, right?
No, he was
anything that
unconscious.
happened.
He's
So
like,
but he didn't remember fading or anything. He
No.
said he remembered going into a peaceful moment. At least
yeah.
that's what,
I mean, and I think that's what, and I've read about this and I've seen videos about this, that when you're dying for whatever reason, that your body or your brain starts feeding you all these hallucinations of that's what people say is oh, I went and I saw a tunnel and a hand reaching out in the sky and I went to heaven. I mean, they've proven that is not near-death experience. When they put those pilots on the centrifugal machine where they spin them and they go into high G's, they're nowhere near dying, but the brain, because the blood is draining away from it, thinks you're dying, so he plays that animation. So all these pilots are saying, oh yeah, I went to the pearly gates, and
Right.
It's just your body hallucinating, which is pretty cool. I mean, imagine your brain plays this animation, so you die in peace. Take it easy, just go to sleep, you're dead. That's pretty cool. So this guy, probably his brain was okay, this is bad.
This is the end.
Start loading the hallucination. And so yeah, he didn't remember anything. But anyway, I thought the documentary was cool.
Yeah, good one. Good commentary on your part. I didn't really have much to add. I think your theory makes some sense.
Yeah, and I might be completely wrong
I-
because I'm not a commercial diver, but at
but
least
I
from
like-
rebreathers.
Well, you're
that's
taking
makes
what
sense.
you know from rebreathers and semi-closed and applying it to this situation. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
But yeah, I'm
I
glad
just
this
think
guy
it's
made
more
it.
that he was literally barely breathing because his heart was barely pumping and his body completely shut down. So whatever little bit he may have needed, again, I'm repeating myself, was just enough to sustain brain function because of the cold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they seem to have concluded, as I remember afterwards. So
Yep.
anyway, amazing.
I
And I don't
wonder.
remember, when I say cold, guys, it was the North Sea, so I don't remember the exact temperature, but 30s or really low 30s.
Yeah. I wonder if that's Fahrenheit. I wonder if there are any safety protocols or anything put in place now. Maybe they're putting stage
Sure.
bottles or something hey,
Right.
you go in with 280s or 380s or whatever of Trimix. I don't know, that will give you an hour of breathing. I don't know if
There's
there's
think so.
anything in place put together from this, but hopefully they were able to learn something and or maybe a backup GPS system that if the first one dies, you hit this switch and the second one engages, or
that if we
something
could do this, I would want to try it.
No.
I know we can't. That's the only reason.
Right.
Like, they're not going to let us.
Thank God.
Hey, guys, you guys want to try to get fully saturated and drop down to the bottom of the North Sea with a tether?
I'm good.
We'd be like, well, yeah. Can we film it for Dive Talk? Gus would be like, at that point, Gus maybe be like,
no, they'll just
what kind of lights?
They'll look at me
before
and
I make a decision. What kind of lights? How's the lighting?
No, they'll just look at me and they'll be like, all right, you can go. We don't have a suit for you, or a helmet that fits.
I don't know.
So that would be. Whew,
could be really
so
good
glad.
lighting though. You like that when the lighting's good.
All right. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed our reaction to Last Breath and the Chris Lemon story. This whole incident. I know that it's been requested many, many times. And again, we didn't react to the full documentary. We encourage you to go check it out. We both enjoyed it. It was pretty awesome. So
really
go
cool.
check it out on Netflix. The title of it is Last Breath. But other than that, now you know at least our opinion and hypotheses on what happened and how this guy survived.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. And once again, shopdivetalk.com. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And stay tuned for even more reactions coming up.
See you guys.